An empire can vanish in a single generation, but its roads may walk the earth for 1,000 years. This is the quiet mystery at the heart of our history. Why is it that the grandest palaces and proudest statues of ancient powers often crumble into dust, while the simple, practical highways they built somehow refuse to die? Think of the vast Persian royal road, a nervous system for a mighty empire, or the legendary Roman Via Appia, an arrow-straight declaration of power. Their creators, the Achaemenid Persians and the Romans, are long gone, their political dreams dissolved into history. Yet the ghostly paths they paved endured, carrying merchants, pilgrims, and armies for centuries after the empires themselves were just a memory. This video will give you a complete framework for understanding this strange resilience, revealing the 4 key ingredients that allow a road to achieve immortality. We will uncover how a route built for imperial couriers could become a thread in the Silk Road, and how a military highway could transform into a sacred pilgrim's path. What does the stubborn life of an old road tell us about the true foundations of human civilization? A palace is a statement of power frozen in stone. Its purpose is singular, its meaning inseparable from the ruler who commanded it. When that power fades, the palace becomes a hollow shell, a monument to a ghost. It might be quarried for its bricks, left to crumble, or perhaps repurposed as a museum or a stable, its original function utterly lost. A border is a line drawn in the sand of politics, a declaration of who is in and who is out, and when the wind of conquest blows, that line is the first thing erased. Capitals fall silent, their grand administrative buildings standing empty, awaiting new masters with new flags. These are the ephemeral artifacts of empire, deeply tied to a specific moment, a specific ideology, a specific name etched in history. But a road is different. A road is not a statement, it is a question. It does not say, "Look at me," it asks, "Where do you want to go?" Its value is not in its symbolism, but in its service. This is our core contradiction. Why does the practical, humble highway so often outlive the glorious, imposing monuments built by the very same civilization? To solve this, we must stop thinking of roads as just strips of pavement or cobblestone. We must look deeper, past the engineering, to understand what qualities are embedded within a truly great route. Qualities that grant it a life of its own, long after the empire that first cleared its path has turned to dust. What is it about a road that allows it to transcend politics? The answer lies in the very first ingredient of an immortal road, a principle perfectly embodied by a route that predates even the Romans. To understand it, we must travel to the heart of the ancient world, to the empire of Cyrus the Great and his successors, the Achaemenid Persians. This was the first true superpower, stretching from the Aegean Sea to the Indus River. Governing such a vast and diverse territory was an unprecedented challenge. The solution was not just a road, but a revolutionary system of communication, the Persian Royal Road. This was the internet of its age, a meticulously engineered network designed for one primary purpose: speed. Imperial messengers could travel from one end of the empire to the other in just 7 days, a journey that would have taken an ordinary caravan 3 months. This incredible feat was made possible by a chain of way stations placed a day's ride apart, where a fresh horse and rider were always waiting. The road itself was carefully maintained, cleared of bandits, and marked with distant stones. It was the literal lifeline of the empire, allowing news, decrees, and intelligence to flow with a speed that kept the distant provinces firmly under the imperial thumb. But here is the critical point: the royal road was not carved through untamed wilderness on a whim. Its brilliant engineers followed a logic far older and more enduring than any single emperor. They traced their path along ancient trade corridors, following river valleys, mountain passes, and the grazing lands that nomadic peoples had used for millennia. The Persian achievement was to formalize, secure, and optimize a route that geography itself had already suggested. So when Alexander the Great toppled the last Achaemenid king, he did not destroy this highway. He inherited it. The empire that built the road was gone, but the geographic logic beneath it, the valleys that offered the easiest passage, the mountain gaps that connected fertile plains, these features were permanent. The royal road's first life was as an imperial artery, but its foundation was something far more timeless, a story that would continue long after the Persian palaces fell silent. That geographic intelligence is the first and most powerful survival mechanism for any ancient highway. A road built on political ambition alone is a fragile thing, but a road built in harmony with the land possesses a kind of immortality. The Persian royal road succeeded not because of its stone or its way stations, but because its planners were brilliant students of the earth. They understood that the shortest distance between 2 points is not always a straight line, it is the line of least resistance. So they laid their highway along the gentle slopes of river valleys, which provided water, easier grades for travelers, and naturally cleared pathways. They sought out mountain passes that had been used by migrating animals and nomadic peoples for centuries, the very gaps in the rock that made crossing possible. They connected dots between oases and fertile plains, the life-giving nodes of the ancient world. In essence, they did not conquer the landscape, they collaborated with it. This is what separates a road that dies with its empire from one that lives for millennia. A politically motivated road might be built to connect a new capital to a general's birthplace, or to bypass a rebellious province. Its route is arbitrary, serving a temporary need, but a road built on geographic logic serves a permanent human need, the need to move from here to there with the greatest ease and safety. When the Achaemenid Empire faded, that need did not disappear. The next power, the Seleucids, and then the Parthians, and later still the merchants of the Silk Road, all looked at that same stretch of land and asked the same fundamental question. What is the best way across? And every time geography whispered the same answer: the valley is here, the pass is here, the reliable springs are here. The old Persian road, by following this ancient wisdom, had already solved the problem for them. It became a permanent feature of the human map, as enduring as the river it traced. So the road's first life was as an imperial courier route, but its foundation was something eternal. This is why you can still trace its ghost on modern maps beneath highways and railroads. It survived because it was always more than a Persian road. It was the land's own idea for a path, simply given form by human hands. But a road built in harmony with the land is only half the story. For a path to truly cheat time, it must also be built to last, a principle mastered by a civilization that turned road building into an art form. Centuries after the Persian royal road, another empire arose with an even more audacious vision for binding its territories together. The Romans did not just follow geography, they sought to master it. Their greatest early achievement was the Via Appia, the Appian Way, begun in the year 312 B.C. and later hailed as the Regina Viarum, the Queen of Roads. Its purpose was starkly political and military. Rome had just defeated neighboring rivals in a bitter conflict, and the Appian Way was engineered as a permanent spear thrust into the heart of newly conquered territory. It was a road for legions, allowing soldiers to march swiftly from Rome to the volatile south, projecting power and suppressing rebellion with ruthless efficiency. This was a highway designed to make a statement, and its engineering screamed Roman authority. While earlier roads might meander, the Appian Way was famous for its breathtakingly straight alignments, cutting through hills and spanning marshes with a disregard for the landscape that was both arrogant and brilliant. Its construction was a marvel of layered craftsmanship. A deep trench was dug, then filled with a foundation of large stones, a middle layer of rubble cemented with lime, and finally a smooth, cambered surface of fitted volcanic stones that shed water. This was not a dirt path, it was a permanent, indestructible ribbon of stone. For centuries, it served its purpose flawlessly. It carried conquering armies, then the wealth and goods of a thriving empire, and finally the solemn funeral processions of Rome's elite, who built their lavish tombs along its sides as a final testament to their status. The Via Appia was the ultimate symbol of Roman order and might, a physical manifestation of the phrase "all roads lead to Rome." But then history turned. The Western Roman Empire, plagued by internal strife and external pressures, gradually fragmented. The last emperor in the West was deposed in the late 5th century A.D. The centralized power that built, funded, and guarded the Appian Way evaporated. The legions were gone. The imperial administrators vanished. The question hanging over this magnificent stone highway was now a profound one. What is the fate of a masterpiece when the artist's hand is no longer there to maintain it? Could a road built so explicitly for imperial control possibly survive the empire that gave it life? The empire was gone, but its bones remained. When the last Roman administrators departed, the grand vision of a unified network faded, yet something remarkably stubborn was left behind on the landscape. The Appian Way and its sister roads did not simply vanish. They underwent a strange transformation, from a living system of imperial control into a silent, enduring skeleton. This skeleton was not made of stone alone, but of sheer geographic permanence. The Romans, in their drive for efficiency, had solved thousands of local transportation puzzles, identifying the best river crossing, the most stable hillside, the driest path through a marsh. That solved puzzle, etched into the earth, became their lasting legacy. Even as the empire's political body decayed, this infrastructure skeleton refused to erode. The physical roadbed itself, that layered masterpiece of engineering, possessed a shocking durability. Over centuries, the fine surface stones might be pried up by locals to build cottage walls or village churches. The elegant bridges might lose their parapets, yet the core of the road, the deep foundation of packed rubble and mortar, often survived as a distinct, raised embankment cutting across the countryside. It was a ghost road, a linear mound that refused to be plowed flat. For a medieval farmer, this agger, or raised way, was a nuisance in his field, but for a traveler, a merchant with a cart, or a pilgrim on foot, that same raised line was a gift. It represented a dry, firm path above the surrounding mud, a clearly defined direction when forests had reclaimed the land, and a ready-made foundation that required no fresh surveying. Following the old Roman road was simply the path of least resistance. It required far less effort to clear some brush from an existing embankment than to blaze an entirely new trail through unknown terrain. So the roads lived a second, quieter life. They guided Saxon migrations, connected emerging medieval market towns, and formed the basis for the highway systems of modern European nations. The Roman surveyors, laying out their straight lines with grommers and sighting poles, had unknowingly created a permanent template. Later societies, from kingdoms to republics, did not need to reinvent the wheel, or in this case the road. They simply rebuilt upon the resilient skeleton left for them, a testament to how infrastructure, when built with true foresight, can transcend its creators and serve civilizations yet unborn. The tax collector's ledger closes, but the merchant's ledger is eternal. This is the second great secret of an immortal road. An empire builds highways to move soldiers and collect taxes, to enforce its will upon the land. But the moment that road is open, a quieter, more persistent force discovers it. The merchant sees not a chain of command, but a chain of opportunity. He cares nothing for imperial glory, only for the price of silk in Antioch versus the price in Chang'an. For him, the road is not a symbol of control, it is a calculator for profit. And this commercial logic possesses a stubbornness that political authority can only dream of. When the empire falls and the tax collectors flee, the soldiers disband, and the imperial edicts turn to dust, what remains? The road itself remains, and the merchant's simple, powerful question remains: can I move my goods from here to there more safely, more quickly, and more cheaply on this path than any other? If the answer is yes, that road will see traffic long after the emperor's name is forgotten. This is the economic afterlife, where infrastructure built for power is reborn as a conduit for commerce. The Persian royal road provides the perfect case study. For the Achaemenid kings, it was a tool of governance, but for a caravan master from Babylon, it was a godsend. The road was patrolled, its way stations offered water and rest, and its route was the most efficient one known. When Persian central authority collapsed, those practical advantages did not vanish overnight. Local rulers, seeing the wealth that passed through, often maintained sections for their own tolls. The road's original purpose, to speed imperial messengers, faded into history. But its geographic logic and built infrastructure made it the obvious backbone for something far larger, the emerging Silk Road. The royal road did not die, it was absorbed. Its eastern stretches became critical links in the vast network connecting the Mediterranean world with China. The imperial highway became a commercial artery, its stones worn smooth not by the boots of soldiers, but by the hooves of countless camels carrying spices, glass, and precious fabrics. The road's identity transformed completely. It was no longer the king's road, it was the merchant's road. Its value was no longer measured in military speed, but in the resilience of supply chains and the trust between trading partners thousands of miles apart. This shift highlights a profound truth. Political systems are fragile ideas, but economic networks are resilient patterns of human need. A road that serves only a political idea dies with that idea. But a road that taps into a fundamental human behavior, like trade, inherits a kind of perpetual motion. It becomes a piece of social infrastructure, maintained not by royal decree, but by collective, self-interested use. Every merchant who chose that route, every innkeeper who set up shop beside it, every wheelwright who repaired a cart along its length, was casting a vote for its survival. This is why you can trace the ghost of ancient trade routes in the placement of modern cities and highways. The path persists because the purpose persists. The empire built the channel, but commerce provided the water that would flow through it forever, carving it ever deeper into the landscape of human civilization. High in the thin air of the Andes, another empire mastered the art of the immortal road. Far from the straight stone lines of Rome, the Inca built a highway system that danced with the mountains. This was the Qhapaq Ñan, the royal road, a spine of stone that held the empire together across some of the most punishing terrain on earth. Its engineers performed miracles without the wheel, without iron, and without draft animals. They paved paths with fitted stones along precipitous cliffs, carved stairways into sheer rock faces, and spanned dizzying gorges with braided fiber suspension bridges that swung in the highland wind. This network, stretching over 25,000 miles, had one overarching purpose: to bind the Inca heartland to its conquered provinces. Swift runners called chasquis carried quipu messages along relay stations. Imperial armies marched to quell unrest, and llama caravans transported tribute, from maize to textiles to gold. The road was the ultimate expression of Inca power and organizational genius, a tangible web of control. Then, in the 16th century, came a rupture unlike any the Old World had seen. Spanish conquistadors arrived, toppling the Inca state with astonishing speed through a combination of military technology, alliance with local rivals, and the devastating spread of Old World illnesses. The political entity that conceived, built, and maintained the Qhapaq Ñan was effectively dismantled within a generation. This creates a stark laboratory for our question. Here was a road system of breathtaking sophistication, utterly vital to its creator, severed from that creator in a historical instant. What becomes of a masterpiece when its patron vanishes overnight, and the new rulers have no interest in its original purpose? The fate of the Inca roads would test the very limits of a highway's resilience, revealing whether geography and utility alone could save a path when the world it was built for ceased to exist. The Spanish conquest was a political and cultural earthquake, but it did not level the mountains. When the conquistadors and their successors looked out across the vast, vertical realm they now claimed, they faced an immense logistical nightmare. They possessed guns, horses, and a new religion, but they lacked the intimate, generations-deep knowledge of the Andes that had allowed the Inca to weave their road network through the clouds. To move men, materials, and most importantly, the immense wealth of silver from mines like Potosi, they needed reliable routes, and there, etched into the very bones of the continent, was the answer. The Qhapaq Ñan, the Inca Royal Road, was not an obstacle to the new rulers, it was an unimaginable windfall. Here was a pre-built, continent-spanning highway system, already solving the toughest puzzles of Andean travel. The Spanish did not destroy it. In a supreme act of pragmatic irony, they co-opted it. They became the inheritors of the infrastructure of the very empire they had dismantled. This is the third powerful mechanism of survival for an ancient road: adaptation and integration. A new power, no matter how different its goals or culture, will almost always choose the path of least resistance. Building a new road network from scratch across such terrain would have been a monumental, decades-long expense. Why bother when a magnificent one already existed? So the Spanish modified what they found. They widened sections to accommodate their wheeled carts and horses, something the Inca, who traveled on foot or with llamas, had never needed. They redirected key stretches to connect their new administrative centers and mines directly to ports on the coast. The old Inca highway to Cusco, the sacred capital, might now branch toward Lima, the new Spanish seat of power. The road's soul was altered, its ceremonial purpose stripped away, but its physical body was kept vitally alive. This pattern is not unique to Peru. We see it again and again in history. When the Roman Empire fragmented, emerging medieval kingdoms did not abandon the straight Roman roads. They used them as the military and commercial backbones of their smaller realms. The routes were the same, but the flags flying over the castles that now guarded them were different. This process reveals a humbling truth for conquerors. Military victory can be swift, but truly reshaping a landscape requires a depth of local knowledge that takes centuries to acquire. The Inca understood where the stable mountain passes were, where the landslides were frequent, where to find water in the high desert. That knowledge was encoded in the placement of their road. By adopting it, the Spanish were not just saving effort, they were tacitly accepting the superior geographic intelligence of the civilization they had overthrown. The road became a silent teacher, guiding the new masters along the old, proven ways. So the Qhapaq Ñan lived on, not as a sacred Inca path, but as the crucial artery for the Spanish colonial economy, carrying the silver that would flood world markets. Its identity was rewritten, its purpose transformed from imperial unity to colonial extraction, but its essential line on the map persisted. It survived because it was useful, and utility is a language every succeeding power understands. A soldier marches for his king, but a pilgrim walks for his soul. This introduces the third and perhaps most powerful force that can grant a road eternal life, a spiritual purpose. When an empire shatters into 100 quarreling kingdoms, its political highways risk becoming forgotten tracks. But if those same paths become imbued with sacred meaning, they are reborn with a resilience that defies all earthly politics. This is the story of how the very roads built by Rome to project its military might were slowly transformed into arteries of faith, guiding the feet of countless believers toward redemption. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the Grand Network did not simply decay. Across a fractured and often dangerous medieval Europe, a new kind of traveler took to the old Roman ways, not the legionary with his spear, but the penitent with his staff and scallop shell. These were pilgrims, individuals undertaking long, arduous journeys to holy sites, seeking forgiveness, healing, or spiritual merit. Their destinations were places like Rome itself, the burial place of St. Peter and St. Paul, or Canterbury in England, site of Thomas Becket's martyrdom. But the most legendary of all was Santiago de Compostela in far northwestern Spain, where the remains of the apostle St. James were believed to be interred. To reach these distant shrines from across France, Germany, and beyond, pilgrims needed safe, reliable routes, and there, cutting straight across the landscape, were the enduring backbones of the old Roman roads. The Via Traiana, the Via Domitia, and countless others became the literal pathways to salvation. This was a profound repurposing. A highway originally engineered to speed the legions of Caesar was now trod by humble peasants hoping to touch a saint's relic. The road's function had been completely inverted, from an instrument of secular control to a conduit for divine grace. And this new purpose came with its own powerful engine for preservation. Unlike a state that might neglect a road during times of war or poverty, the faithful had a perpetual, deeply personal motivation to keep the path viable. Local monasteries and churches, recognizing both spiritual duty and economic opportunity, established hospices and hospitals along the routes. Towns grew to serve the constant flow of pilgrims, maintaining bridges and clearing landslides not because a king commanded it, but because their community's identity and livelihood now depended on this sacred traffic. The road became embedded in cultural memory through story and song. It was no longer just a physical track, it was the way of St. James, the Camino de Santiago, a journey every devout Christian might aspire to undertake. This spiritual significance provided a layer of protection that royal edicts could not. A king might abandon a fortress, but a community would think twice before letting a pilgrim's bridge collapse, for that was a pathway to the divine. The road thus achieved a form of cultural immortality. Its stones were sanctified by the hopes and prayers of millions. Its route was charted not on official maps, but in the guidebooks for pilgrims and the collective imagination of a continent. Long after the memory of which Roman emperor built a particular stretch had faded, everyone knew this was the road to Santiago. The highway had transcended its original builder entirely, becoming a permanent feature of the European soul, a testament to how infrastructure, when woven into the fabric of belief, gains a life force that mere politics can never provide. A name can outlive the stone it was carved upon. Long after an empire's last census is taken, its roads continue to whisper their stories through the names we give them. This is the fourth and final ingredient in a highway's immortality, the power of myth and memory. When a route sheds its original function, it does not become anonymous. Instead, it often acquires a legendary new identity, one woven from folklore and preserved in the very words we use to point the way. Consider a simple phrase like the King's Highway. Across Europe and the Middle East, you will find countless roads bearing this title or its local equivalent. The curious thing is, nobody can remember which king. The specific monarch, his wars, his laws, have all faded into the historical mist, but the name stuck, elevating a simple track into something grander, something permanent in the collective imagination. That name does more than just label, it sanctifies. It transforms a utilitarian path into a landmark of mental geography. To abandon the King's Highway feels wrong, almost sacrilegious, because it is no longer just a road, it is a piece of the local story. This process happens constantly. A Roman road might be rebranded as the Pilgrim's Way. A treacherous mountain pass used by medieval traders becomes the Devil's Staircase. A coastal track where smugglers once landed becomes Whisper's Lane. These are not official designations from a Ministry of Transport. They are organic names born from centuries of use, accident, and tall tales told around hearths. Each name is a seed of folklore, and that folklore acts as a powerful preservative. A community is far less likely to let a legendary path disappear into the undergrowth than a nameless dirt track. The road becomes part of their heritage, a character in their local landscape. Its preservation becomes a matter of cultural identity, not just transportation need. We see this brilliantly along the Silk Road. The entire network is a tapestry of such names, many of which told you exactly what to expect. The Jade Pass, the Turquoise Mountain Route, the Valley of 1,000 Springs. These were not just descriptions, they were promises and warnings, encoded knowledge passed from one caravan master to the next. The name itself held vital information about what you would find, or what you must fear, along that stretch. This created a self-reinforcing cycle. The name, born from the road's reality, helped ensure the road's continued use, which in turn kept the name alive for the next generation. The road thus lives a double life, one as a physical line on the earth and another as a durable line in the story of a people. It becomes impossible to separate the path from the parable. This is why you can still walk the Ridgeway in England, a track older than the pyramids, and feel the weight of its name, knowing Bronze Age traders, Saxon farmers, and countless others saw that same high horizon. The name Ridgeway is a direct inheritance, a thread of memory connecting us to every soul who ever found safety and direction on that high ground. When a road achieves this status, it has completed its journey from infrastructure to heirloom. It is no longer owned by an empire, but by the human imagination, and nothing is more enduring than that. Roman engineers did not build for their own time, they built for eternity. This philosophy of permanence, what we might call engineering overkill, is the final physical ingredient that separates a forgotten track from an immortal highway. It is the difference between writing a message in the sand and carving it into bedrock. While a simple dirt path serves its purpose for a season, it is at the mercy of the first heavy rain, the first overgrown thicket, the first farmer's plow. It leaves no lasting mark. The Romans rejected this transience entirely. Their approach was one of breathtaking, almost obsessive initial investment. They understood that to make something last 1,000 years, you must build it as if it will need to last 10,000. This began with the very foundation. Before a single stone was laid, laborers would dig a trench, a fossa, as deep as a tall person is high. This was not a shallow scrape, it was an excavation. Into this trench went the first layer, the stotumen, a foundation of large, rough stones packed tightly together. This served to drain water downward, away from the upper layers, preventing the entire structure from turning into a muddy quagmire. On top of this came the rudus, a thick middle layer of rubble mixed with lime mortar, creating a firm, stable platform. Finally, the crowning glory, the summum dorsum, the wearing surface. This was often made of hard, locally sourced volcanic stones like basalt, carefully fitted together like a puzzle, and cambered so rainwater would run off into side ditches. This was not merely a road, it was a multi-layered geological sandwich designed to defy time. The result was a structure that degraded with a majestic slowness. When maintenance ceased after the empire's fall, the fine surface stones might be scavenged. Weeds would sprout in the cracks, but that deep, packed foundation, the agger, remained as a distinct, raised line across the countryside. It did not vanish, it merely simplified. It became a fossil of itself, yet a fossil still solid enough to guide travelers and define property lines for centuries. This graceful degradation is the hallmark of overbuilt infrastructure. A modern asphalt road, if abandoned, becomes unrecognizable within decades, reclaimed by plants and weather. But a Roman road, even in ruins, declared its intention. Its bones were so substantial that they dictated land use long after their builders were gone. That initial, extravagant cost in labor and material created a physical asset so resilient it could not be easily erased, ensuring the road's ghost would linger on the landscape, patiently waiting for a future civilization to rediscover its utility. A palace demands perfection to fulfill its purpose. If its roof leaks, its halls become unusable. If its gates rust shut, its grandeur is locked away, a beautiful shell with no function. A road is different. It can be magnificent, but it does not require magnificence to be useful. This is the crucial distinction between a monument and a pathway, and it is the secret to a road's stubborn survival. A road is linear, a line drawn across the landscape, a single fallen tree, a washed-out bridge, a collapsed section of paving stones. These are setbacks, not death sentences. Travelers can go around. A local community can patch the worst spot with whatever materials are at hand. The route itself, the idea of the path from one valley to the next, remains intact in the collective mind. Its utility has a remarkably low threshold. Imagine a grand Roman bridge crumbling over a river. For a royal procession with heavy carts, this is a disaster. But for a farmer taking his goat to market, for a pilgrim on foot, it is merely an inconvenience. He will find a shallow ford upstream or pile some stones to create a makeshift crossing. The traffic adapts, and the road's essential life continues, even if its grandeur fades. This adaptability is a form of resilience that a static monument can never possess. A cathedral cannot have a hole in its wall and still hold a service. A royal tomb cannot be half collapsed and still command reverence. But a road can be rough, overgrown, and poorly maintained, and still serve as the most logical way from here to there. It survives on usefulness, not on preservation. This is why we find the ghosts of ancient highways still traced in modern country lanes and hiking trails. The original stone is gone, buried under centuries of dirt and newer gravel, but the alignment persists because it answers a simple, enduring question. Where is the best way through? The road's legacy is not in its pristine condition, but in the indelible line it left on the land and in the habits of the people who live there. It becomes a tradition of movement, passed down not in law books, but in the instinctive turn of a wagon wheel away from the muddy field and onto the faint, firm ridge that has always been there. But a single road, no matter how well built, is still a single thread. It can be cut, flooded, or controlled by a hostile power. For a system to achieve true immortality, it must become something more fluid, more adaptable. It must become a network. This is the final evolutionary stage of the ancient highway, and its greatest example is not a road at all, but a legend, the Silk Road. We often picture it as a single, lonely caravan trail stretching from China to Rome, but that image is a myth. In reality, the Silk Road was a vast, shimmering web of possibilities. It was a continent-wide nervous system made up of countless smaller pathways, many of which were the very imperial roads we have already discussed. The Persian royal road fed into it. Roman highways in Syria and Anatolia became its western terminals. The trans-Asian routes used by steppe nomads formed its northern branches. It was not one road, but 100 choices. This structure granted it a resilience that a single highway could never possess. Think of it like a river delta. If one channel silts up, the water simply finds another way to the sea. The Silk Road operated on the same principle. If war closed the northern route through the steppes, caravans would shift south through the mountain passes of the Pamirs. If a tax was too high at one oasis city, merchants would plot a course to a rival town further along the chain. The network was alive with information and alternative paths. This constant, collective decision-making by thousands of merchants, guides, and caravan masters is what kept the system alive for centuries, long after every single empire that had originally built its component parts had risen and fallen. The Han dynasty in China, the Parthians in Persia, the Romans in the West, none of these political entities endured for the full life of the Silk Road. They were temporary custodians of small sections of the web. The network itself, however, possessed a life of its own, governed not by imperial decree, but by the relentless logic of supply, demand, and safety. A single road serves a single purpose, but a network serves 1,000 purposes simultaneously. A strand that began as a military road for Persian couriers could, centuries later, be carrying Buddhist monks from India to China. A Roman highway built to move legions could become the final approach for a caravan of Venetian merchants buying spices in Antioch. The identity of each individual path was fluid, subsumed by the greater, more powerful identity of the network. This is the ultimate lesson in infrastructure survival. A network cannot be killed by beheading it because it has no single head. It is a decentralized, organic entity that thrives on change and redundancy. When one route faded due to climate change, political upheaval, or simply the shifting fortunes of cities, the traffic did not stop. It simply pulsed along a different artery. The goal was not to preserve a specific road, but to preserve the connection itself. This is why the idea of the Silk Road outlived the use of any of its specific paths. Even when maritime routes eventually offered a safer alternative for bulk goods, the overland network left a permanent cultural and genetic imprint across Asia, a testament to the unstoppable force of connectedness. The true legacy of those ancient imperial engineers, then, was not just the stones they laid, but the nodes they created, the oases, caravanserais, and mountain passes that became the immutable points on a map between which the ever-shifting web of human movement would forever be drawn. A road does more than connect places, it creates them. This is the subtle, powerful force of demographic gravity. Long after the empire's couriers have stopped running, long after the legions have marched for the last time, the highway they built continues to exert a quiet, irresistible pull on human life. It begins with a single point of necessity. Perhaps it is a reliable spring, a day's journey from the last fortified outpost. An enterprising individual sees an opportunity and builds a simple inn, a place for travelers to rest and water their animals. This inn becomes a known landmark. A blacksmith sets up a forge nearby to shoe horses and repair wagon wheels. A farmer, realizing he can sell his surplus grain directly to passing caravans rather than haul it to a distant city, builds a homestead. A chapel is erected for pilgrims to offer thanks for safe passage. Slowly, organically, a hamlet is born, clinging to the side of the road like moss to a stone. This settlement is not an accident of geography. It is a direct creation of the traffic flowing past its door. The road provides its reason for being. This process repeats itself at intervals dictated by the rhythm of travel, a day's walk or a day's ride apart. Over generations, hamlets grow into villages, and strategic villages grow into market towns. A crossroads where two ancient highways meet might evolve into a bustling city. These places are literally children of the road, their streets and property lines often aligning with the original route, their economies forever intertwined with the flow of people and goods along it. The original purpose of the highway is now irrelevant. The road is no longer just a path from imperial capital to rebellious province B. It has become Main Street. It is the place where local farmers come to sell their cheese, where news arrives from the wider world, and where festivals are held. It has generated its own ecosystem of daily life. This creates a self-perpetuating cycle, a gravitational pull that ensures the road's survival. Even if through traffic from distant lands were to completely stop, which it rarely does, the road now serves a vital local function. The farmer needs to get his cart to the weekly market in the next town. The innkeeper needs supplies delivered. Families visit relatives in neighboring villages. This constant, embedded local traffic creates a permanent demand for the route to be passable. Communities will now clear snow from it in winter, patch its worst potholes and guard its bridges, not for some distant king's benefit, but for their own survival and prosperity. The road has successfully transplanted its life force from the central authority that built it into the very communities that grew up along its length. It is no longer an external imposition, it is a shared local asset. This transforms the highway from a line on a map into a living cultural and economic corridor. The road becomes the spine, and the towns are the organs that give it lasting purpose. Think of the famous Via Appia again. After Rome fell, the grand tombs of the aristocracy became quarries for building stone, and the imperial traffic ceased. But the villages that had served the legions and the merchants did not vanish. They adapted. The road became the central artery of a regional agricultural economy, connecting farms to local markets. Its stone foundation, though scavenged in places, remained the firmest and driest route through the marshy landscape. Centuries later, when the Grand Tour brought wealthy northern Europeans to Italy, they traveled these very same stretches to see the romantic ruins, and new inns and guide services sprang up to serve them, another chapter in the road's endless reinvention. The path persisted because it had woven itself into the fabric of daily life, creating a chain of human habitation that could not easily be undone. The road created the towns, and the towns, in turn, became the guardians of the road. Yet for every road that achieves immortality, there are countless others that vanish without a trace. This is the crucial counterpoint. Longevity is not a guaranteed birthright for any highway. It is a prize won only by a specific and rare convergence of factors. To truly understand why some roads endure, we must also look at the roads that did not, the pathways that returned to the earth when their builders turned to dust. Consider the vast ceremonial causeways built by ancient cultures like the Maya. These were stunning white plaster roads, often raised high above the jungle floor, connecting temples, plazas, and sacred ball courts. They were masterpieces of spiritual and civic engineering, but their purpose was profoundly local and symbolic. They were not designed for long-distance trade or to follow geographic logic across a continent. They were designed for ritual processions, for the movement of priests and nobles within a ceremonial center. When that center's power faded, often due to a complex mix of environmental strain and social change, the reason for the causeway evaporated. The jungle, with its relentless humidity and fast-growing vegetation, did not simply cover these roads, it consumed them. Without a constant, practical purpose that extended beyond the city walls, without a stream of merchants or pilgrims to beat back the encroaching green, the stone was swallowed whole. The road died with the ceremony it was built to serve. Similarly, think of roads built in ecologically fragile or transient landscapes. Ancient traders might carve a path across a specific dune field in a vast desert, a route that was viable only as long as a particular oasis spring flowed. If that spring failed due to a shift in climate or the water table, the road became a death trap. Its geographic logic was shattered in a generation. Without the life-giving node, the connecting line was meaningless. The desert sands, always waiting, would erase every trace. Or consider a military supply road built hastily through a swamp for a single campaign. It served a brilliant, immediate tactical purpose, but it fought against the land's own nature. The moment the army marched away and maintenance stopped, the water reclaimed its territory. The road dissolved because it was an act of force, not collaboration. These forgotten paths teach us a sobering lesson. A road is a pact between human intention and the enduring realities of the earth. If the intention is too narrow, too tied to a single king, a single god, or a single battle, the pact dissolves when that moment passes. If the route defies the land's own logic for a temporary gain, the land will inevitably win. The roads that vanish are those built for a world that no longer exists, on foundations that could not hold. Their silence underscores the triumph of the survivors, those routes that mastered the art of becoming indispensable, not just to an empire, but to the land itself and to the endless human need to connect. Geography never forgets its own solutions. The first and most powerful secret to a road's immortality is not found in its stone or its width, but in its humble agreement with the land. The most enduring highways are those that perfectly align with the path of least resistance offered by the landscape itself. They are not acts of conquest over nature, but acts of collaboration. They follow the logic written by rivers, by glaciers, by the slow folding of the earth. This is the immutable geographic truth that ensures a route's rediscovery by every subsequent generation. Think of a mountain range, a seemingly impenetrable wall of rock. For a human, it is a barrier, but for water, for millennia, it has been a puzzle to solve. That water finds the weakest point, the seam in the stone, and carves a valley. Over eons, it grinds out a pass. The first humans to cross that range did not scale its highest peak out of bravery. They followed the water's answer. They walked through the gap it had made. An empire, centuries later, seeking to move an army from one fertile plain to another, faces the same puzzle. Its engineers survey the land, and where do they point? To that same pass. It is the optimal solution, the only logical crossing for 50 miles in either direction. They might pave it, fortify its heights with a castle, give it a grand name, but the fundamental choice was made by geology long before the first surveyor arrived. The road succeeds because it is built upon a permanent fact. The same is true for a river crossing. The ideal ford is not random. It is where the riverbed is firm and shallow, where the banks are gentle enough for a cart to descend and climb. That spot is a geographic gift. A local tribe uses it for generations. A trading post grows beside it. When a kingdom seeks to build a bridge to collect tolls and speed travel, where does it place the foundation? Directly over that ancient, optimal ford. The bridge may burn in a war, its stones may tumble into the water, but the knowledge of that crossing place survives in local memory. People will continue to cross there, on makeshift rafts or by wading, because the river itself invites it. This principle extends to the broad, flat coastal plains that cradle civilizations, or the ridgelines that offer dry passage above swampy lowlands. A road that aligns with these pre-existing natural highways possesses a kind of borrowed permanence. It taps into a logic that is older than history and more reliable than any king's decree. When the empire that built the road disappears, the mountains do not move. The river does not change its course overnight. The optimal pass remains the optimal pass. The next people to need a route from here to there, whether they are merchants, migrants, or a new rising power, will look at the land and ask the same question. And the land, silently, will give the same answer. They will find the old roadbed, perhaps overgrown, and recognize it for what it truly is, not a relic of a dead empire, but a shared discovery of the best way through. This is why you can trace the ghost of the Persian royal road on a modern satellite map, its path echoing in today's highways. It is why the Appian way still defines the countryside south of Rome. Their builders understood that to create something eternal, you must first listen to the earth. The road that survives is the one that was always meant to be there. The tax collector's ledger closes, but the merchant's ledger is eternal. This is the second great secret of an immortal road. An empire builds highways to move soldiers and collect taxes, to enforce its will upon the land. But the moment that road is open, a quieter, more persistent force discovers it. The merchant sees not a chain of command, but a chain of opportunity. He cares nothing for imperial glory, only for the price of silk in Antioch versus the price in Chang'an. For him, the road is not a symbol of control, it is a calculator for profit. And this commercial logic possesses a stubbornness that political authority can only dream of. When the empire falls and the tax collectors flee, the soldiers disband, and the imperial edicts turn to dust, what remains? The road itself remains, and the merchant's simple, powerful question remains. Can I move my goods from here to there more safely, more quickly, and more cheaply on this path than any other? If the answer is yes, that road will see traffic long after the emperor's name is forgotten. This is the economic afterlife, where infrastructure built for power is reborn as a conduit for commerce. The Persian royal road provides the perfect case study. For the Achaemenid kings, it was a tool of governance, but for a caravan master from Babylon, it was a godsend. The road was patrolled, its way stations offered water and rest, and its route was the most efficient one known. When Persian central authority collapsed, those practical advantages did not vanish overnight. Local rulers, seeing the wealth that passed through, often maintained sections for their own tolls. The road's original purpose, to speed imperial messengers, faded into history. But its geographic logic and built infrastructure made it the obvious backbone for something far larger, the emerging Silk Road. The royal road did not die, it was absorbed. Its eastern stretches became critical links in the vast network connecting the Mediterranean world with China. The imperial highway became a commercial artery, its stones worn smooth not by the boots of soldiers, but by the hooves of countless camels carrying spices, glass, and precious fabrics. The road's identity transformed completely. It was no longer the king's road, it was the merchant's road. Its value was no longer measured in military speed, but in the resilience of supply chains and the trust between trading partners thousands of miles apart. This shift highlights a profound truth. Political systems are fragile ideas, but economic networks are resilient patterns of human need. A road that serves only a political idea dies with that idea. But a road that taps into a fundamental human behavior like trade inherits a kind of perpetual motion. It becomes a piece of social infrastructure maintained not by royal decree, but by collective, self-interested use. Every merchant who chose that route, every innkeeper who set up shop beside it, every wheelwright who repaired a cart along its length, was casting a vote for its survival. This is why you can trace the ghost of ancient trade routes in the placement of modern cities and highways. The path persists because the purpose persists. The empire built the channel, but commerce provided the water that would flow through it forever, carving it ever deeper into the landscape of human civilization. A soldier marches for his king, but a pilgrim walks for her soul. This introduces the third and perhaps most profound force that can grant a road eternal life, a spiritual purpose. When an empire shatters into 100 quarreling kingdoms, its political highways risk becoming forgotten tracks. But if those same paths become woven into the sacred journey of a people, they are reborn with a resilience that defies all earthly politics. This is the story of cultural adoption, where a road ceases to be mere infrastructure and becomes a thread in the very fabric of tradition. Its preservation is no longer a matter of state budget, but of collective memory and faith. Consider the ancient routes to sites like Mecca, Varanasi, or Iona. For generations, these paths have been walked not out of necessity, but out of devotion. The physical act of the journey is as important as the destination. A family might travel the same road their ancestors walked for centuries, stopping at the same wells, resting under the same ancient trees mentioned in old stories. The road itself is sanctified by this repetition. It accumulates meaning with every footstep. This creates a powerful, decentralized engine for preservation. No central authority needs to decree that the path be kept clear. The pilgrims themselves and the communities that arise to serve them become its guardians. A village along the route will maintain its section because their identity is intertwined with welcoming the faithful. They will tell stories of famous pilgrims who passed through, point out landmarks of miracles or historical events, and ensure the way is safe for the next traveler. The road becomes a living library of cultural memory. Its survival is guaranteed by something far stronger than law. It is guaranteed by ritual. This phenomenon extends beyond formal religion to seasonal migration routes. For nomadic pastoralists, the annual movement between summer and winter grazing grounds is not a choice. It is a rhythm as old as their culture. The paths they follow are etched into the land by countless generations of herds. These are not roads in the Roman sense, but they are highways of tradition. Their exact course, the location of each campsite and watering hole, is passed down through song and story. To lose the path is to lose a part of their heritage and their livelihood. The community collectively remembers and protects the route, not with stone and mortar, but with knowledge and practice. Even when such groups settle or their way of life changes, the ghost of those migration corridors often lingers, influencing later roads and even modern boundaries. Folklore, too, can baptize a road. A lonely track through a forest might become known as the ferry path, a route said to be used by otherworldly beings. A local community, steeped in these tales, might avoid building on it or disturbing it, not out of fear, but out of a deep-seated respect for the old stories. The road is protected by superstition, which is simply another form of cultural memory. It gains a layer of meaning that has nothing to do with its original engineering and everything to do with the human imagination. This cultural investment acts as a permanent immune system against abandonment. A government might neglect a highway during a war or a fiscal crisis. But a cultural practice, a pilgrimage, a seasonal migration, these are patterns that repeat with the turning of the years and the generations. They create a constant, low-level traffic that beats back the wilderness, that keeps the knowledge of the path alive in 1,000 minds and hearts. The road is no longer a tool, it is a character in the story a people tell about themselves. And as long as that story is told, the road, in some form, will endure. Stone does not negotiate with time. This is the final, physical truth behind an immortal road. While geography provides the logic, commerce provides the traffic, and culture provides the meaning, none of it matters if the road itself dissolves back into the earth after the first hard rain. The fourth and most tangible factor is the sheer, stubborn durability of its construction. The initial investment in material and method sets a road's entire decay timeline. A path scraped from dirt and gravel serves its purpose, but it is a temporary agreement with the landscape. Without constant maintenance, a single season of heavy storms can carve it into a gully, or thick vegetation can reclaim it entirely. It leaves no lasting signature, but a road built with permanence in mind enters into a different kind of relationship with time. It is engineered for a graceful, almost majestic decline. Consider the layered anatomy of a Roman road. Its builders did not simply lay stones on the ground. They excavated a deep trench, then filled it with a foundation of large stones for drainage, a middle layer of rubble cemented with mortar for stability, and finally a smooth, cambered surface of fitted volcanic blocks. This was not a path, it was a geological sandwich designed to last millennia. When the empire fell and systematic maintenance ceased, this overbuilt structure did not vanish. It began a very slow process of simplification. The fine surface stones might be pried up for other buildings, weeds would sprout in the cracks, but that deep, packed foundation, the raised embankment known as the Aga, remained. It became a distinct, linear mound across the countryside, too solid to be plowed flat easily. For centuries, it persisted not as a pristine highway, but as a fossil of itself, a dry, firm ridge above the surrounding fields, a ready-made foundation for a future road. This physical resilience created a crucial window of opportunity, centuries long, for rediscovery and reuse. A dirt track might disappear within a generation of neglect, leaving no clue for future travelers. But a stone road, even in ruins, loudly announces its former purpose. Its bones are so substantial that they continue to dictate movement. A medieval farmer, trying to get his cart to market, would naturally guide his oxen onto that raised, stony embankment rather than struggle through the muddy ditch beside it. A pilgrim looking for the surest way would follow the clear line through an otherwise tangled forest. The road's physical decay was so slow that it remained the obvious solution long after anyone remembered who built it. This principle is visible in the Inca roads as well, where masterfully fitted stone stairways cling to mountainsides. Even when earthquakes toppled the walls of nearby cities, these stairways often held, their interlocking stones shifting but not collapsing. They became rugged but passable trails for local herders and later explorers, their core integrity intact. This durability is a form of silent communication across the ages. It is the builder speaking to an unknown future, saying this was important. The extra labor, the careful selection of stone, the thoughtful drainage, all of it was a bet on longevity. That bet paid off not by preserving the road in its original glory, but by preserving its utility in a degraded yet still functional state. It ensured that when a new society arose and asked once again for the best way through, the land would not just suggest a route through a valley. It would offer up the very stones of the answer, patiently waiting through the silent centuries to be walked upon once more. The logic of the ancient world is still printed on our modern maps. Look at a satellite view of any continent, and you will see the ghost of old paths beneath the concrete and asphalt. Our fastest highways and most vital railways are not random lines drawn by modern planners. They are often just the latest layer of pavement over a route that is thousands of years old. This is the modern echo, proving that the geographic intelligence of those early engineers still whispers to us, dictating the most efficient way to move across a landscape. Take a drive on Interstate 80 in the United States, stretching from New York to San Francisco. You are not just on a modern freeway, you are tracing a story written in wagon ruts. This corridor follows the historic routes of pioneers heading west on the Oregon Trail and the California Trail. But those pioneers were not explorers of untouched wilderness. They were following guides who knew the land. Their guides were often Native American peoples whose knowledge of the terrain was profound. The trails they showed the settlers followed river valleys like the Platte, navigated specific mountain passes like South Pass in Wyoming, and connected vital water sources. These were not just paths, they were survival manuals written into the earth. The pioneers formalized them, and a century later, highway engineers paved them. The geographic logic never changed, only the vehicles traveling it. From moccasin to wagon wheel to rubber tire, the best way across the continent remained the same. This pattern repeats across the globe. In Europe, the Autobahn system in Germany and the autoroutes in France frequently overlay the straight, strategic alignments of old Roman roads. The path a legion marched to secure a border often becomes the most direct line for a modern truck carrying goods between two cities. In the Andes, the Pan-American Highway snakes through the mountains, its engineers solving the same puzzles of slope and stability that Inca road builders mastered centuries before. They often chose the same solutions because the mountains only offer so many viable passes. Even the legendary Silk Road has its contemporary counterpart. The railways and highways connecting China to Europe through Central Asia, part of what is now called the Belt and Road Initiative, reactivate those ancient corridors of exchange. They follow the same oasis chains, skirt the same deserts, and cross the same mountain ranges. The cargo has changed from bolts of silk to shipping containers, but the map is eerily familiar. This persistence reveals a humbling truth about human ingenuity. With all our satellites, geological surveys, and computer models, we often end up confirming what the land has been trying to tell us for millennia. The optimal route for movement is a permanent feature of the landscape, as real as a river or a mountain range. Modern engineering does not create these paths, it simply rediscovers and reinforces them with new materials. The ancient highway's ultimate victory is to become invisible. to so perfectly embody the logic of a place that every future civilization, no matter how advanced, is compelled to use it. It becomes the default setting for human movement, so the next time you are on a long, straight stretch of highway, consider what you are really traveling upon. You are not just on a road, you are on a timeline. Beneath the asphalt is the gravel of a 19th century turnpike, beneath that the packed earth of a medieval trading path, and beneath it all the subtle, enduring wisdom of the first people who ever looked at a hill and decided the best way around it. The empires that built the first versions are gone, but their most practical gift to the future, the path itself, is still carrying us forward. The proof of these ancient journeys is not locked away in old books, but buried in the earth itself. We know these roads outlasted their builders because their physical evidence is scattered across the landscape, waiting to be read. Modern archaeology has become our most powerful tool for deciphering this long, silent story, using technology that would seem like magic to the original engineers. From the sky, satellite imagery and a technique called LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging, peer through dense forest canopies and scrubland to reveal the ghostly lines of old roads. These tools send down pulses of light that map the ground's surface in minute detail, uncovering the subtle, raised embankments of a Roman agger or the faint, straight track of a forgotten Saxon path hidden beneath a modern farmer's field. This bird's eye view shows us the grand pattern, the stubborn persistence of a route across centuries, but the real confirmation comes from ground level, from the quiet work of the field survey. An archaeologist walking a ploughed field in England might spot a scatter of small, worn Roman pottery fragments, a trail of breadcrumbs left by travelers 2,000 years ago, marking the exact line of a highway. In the heart of a bustling modern city, during construction for a new subway line or sewer, workers might suddenly expose the original stone paving of a Roman road, perfectly preserved just a few feet beneath the asphalt of a contemporary street. It is a startling moment of connection where the present literally rests upon the past. Written records add another layer to this detective work. Medieval pilgrim guides, like the 12th century Codex Calixtinus for the Camino de Santiago, are not just spiritual manuals, they are practical itineraries. They describe the roads, the rivers to cross, the towns with hospices, and even the quality of the water in certain wells. By following these descriptions, researchers can match the historic journey to the physical remains on the ground, confirming that the path pilgrims walked in the year 1200 was indeed the same road the Romans built 1,000 years earlier. All these methods together, the view from space, the fragment in the soil, the words in the guidebook, form an irrefutable case. The longevity of these highways is not a theory or a romantic notion. It is an empirical fact written into the very substance of our world. We are not imagining their endurance, we are walking on it, driving over it, and uncovering it piece by piece, finding that the most durable legacy of a fallen empire is often the simple, solid ground beneath our feet. The greatest monuments an empire leaves behind are often the ones it never meant to build. King Darius I, surveying the map of his vast Persian domains, did not dream of a Silk Road connecting continents 1,000 years after his dynasty fell. Appius Claudius Caecus, that formidable Roman censor, ordered the Via Appia built for one brutal, immediate reason: to crush a rebellion and secure Rome's southern flank. Their vision was one of control, of taxation, of military dominance within their own lifetimes. The idea that these stone and dirt pathways would become the sacred routes of foreign pilgrims, the commercial lifelines for kingdoms not yet born, or the templates for nations they could not conceive of, would have seemed absurd to them. This is the beautiful, central paradox of history. The most enduring legacies are frequently the unintended ones, born not from a desire to be remembered, but from a pragmatic need to solve a problem today. The Persian courier stations, placed a day's ride apart for speed, became the caravanserais that sheltered merchants from across the known world. The straight, militarized Roman highway, designed to move legions with ruthless efficiency, later guided medieval penitents seeking a completely different kind of salvation. The infrastructure built to bind a realm together for a single ruler's glory ended up binding humanity together across the centuries. The builders sought to imprint their will upon the earth, but in doing so, they created something far more powerful, a neutral platform. A road does not care who walks it. It does not ask for your allegiance to a long-dead emperor or your belief in a forgotten god. It only asks if you wish to travel from here to there. This neutrality is its superpower. Once the original political intent evaporated, the road was liberated. It became a blank slate, a piece of social hardware that any new culture, religion, or economic system could adopt and reprogram for its own needs. The Inca Qhapaq Ñan, a spine of imperial control, became the backbone of Spanish colonial extraction, and later the foundation for modern Andean trails. Each new user wrote their own story over the old one, but they all relied on the same stubborn line etched into the mountains, so we arrive at a humbling thought. These ancient engineers, in their pursuit of immediate worldly power, accidentally authored a manual for longevity. They discovered, without knowing it, the recipe for creating something that could cheat time. It required building in harmony with immutable geography. It demanded an over-engineering so robust that the structure could degrade gracefully for centuries. And it necessitated solving a universal human problem, the problem of connection. By fulfilling their narrow, imperial goals with such profound practicality, they inadvertently created tools that served the universal, enduring goals of all humanity: to trade, to explore, to believe, and to connect. Their legacy was not the empire they fought to preserve, but the pathways they built to manage it, pathways that quietly outlasted every throne, every border, and every flag, to become permanent threads in the ever-unfolding story of us. This same blueprint for immortality is being written again, right now, not in stone but in silicon. The most direct parallel to our ancient highways is not a modern freeway, but something invisible, the foundational protocols of the digital world. In the late 1960s, a project funded by the United States Department of Defense sought to create a resilient communication network that could survive a nuclear conflict. This research birthed a set of rules for how data should move, a system called Transmission Control Protocol and Internet Protocol, or TCP/IP. Its original purpose was narrowly strategic, a digital highway for military and academic data, designed to be decentralized and robust against attack. The architects of this network were solving a specific, high-stakes problem of their era, much like a Roman engineer plotting a road to secure a restive province. They built a neutral, open platform for moving packets of information from one point to another, without any inherent allegiance to the content being carried. Then something remarkable happened, a story we have seen before. The moment this digital pathway was established, a quieter, more persistent force discovered it. Not merchants with spices, but entrepreneurs with ideas. Not pilgrims seeking relics, but individuals seeking connection. The original military and research purpose became a footnote. The network was adopted and then utterly transformed by commerce and culture. Businesses saw a new frontier for trade, creating global marketplaces where physical distance became irrelevant. Communities formed across continents, sharing knowledge, art, and conversation. The digital highway, built for survival, became the indispensable platform for modern life, reshaping everything from education to entertainment. Its value exploded not because of its original sponsors, but because it solved a universal human desire, the desire to connect and communicate. Just as the Appian way was repurposed by medieval pilgrims, the Internet's infrastructure was repurposed by billions of users for ends its creators never envisioned. This is the hallmark of a truly foundational layer. It provides a reliable, neutral service so fundamental that it becomes a stage upon which countless new stories can be performed. The TCP/IP protocol does not care if the data packet contains a military dispatch, an online purchase, a video call with a loved one, or a social media post. It simply ensures the packet gets through. This neutrality grants it longevity. Governments and corporations have risen and fallen in the digital age, but the underlying protocol persists, constantly updated yet fundamentally unchanged in its core function, because it serves a need more basic than any single entity. It has woven itself into the fabric of global society, becoming as essential as a road or a river. So when we walk an ancient Roman road today, we are tracing the physical precursor to the fiber optic cables beneath our oceans. Both are testaments to a powerful truth that the most enduring infrastructures are those that master the art of becoming invisible, of providing a simple, solid answer to a timeless human question, and then stepping back to let the future write its own journey upon them. The true magic happens when these four ingredients converge. Geography provides the unshakable logic, the path the land itself endorses. Economic utility ensures a constant pulse of life, as merchants and travelers vote with their feet for the most practical route. Cultural significance weaves the road into the identity of a people, protecting it with stories, faith, and tradition. And robust construction gives it the physical stamina to endure centuries of neglect, degrading gracefully from a masterpiece into a durable, reusable foundation. Alone, any one factor can grant a road a longer life, but together they create an unstoppable synergy, a self-reinforcing cycle of survival. The geographic logic attracts commerce, the commerce spawns towns, the towns generate local culture and need, and the durable roadbed supports it all across the ages. This alchemy transforms a highway's very nature. It ceases to be a project, a temporary initiative launched by a ministry and funded by a royal treasury. That is a fragile thing, dependent on the whims of politics and the lifespan of an administration. Instead, the road evolves into a feature. It becomes as much a part of the landscape as the river valley it follows, and as much a part of society as the marketplaces it connects. A feature is not owned, it is simply used. It is maintained not by decree, but by the collective, organic effort of everyone who benefits from its existence. Think of a great river. No single authority commands it to flow, yet countless communities along its banks depend on its water, clear its channels, and build their lives around its course. An immortal road achieves a similar status. It is a piece of social and environmental infrastructure so deeply embedded that removing it would require unweaving the fabric of daily life. The Roman surveyor who first plotted the line of the Via Appia was executing a state project, but the medieval pilgrim who followed its stony ridge, the Renaissance farmer who used its embankment as a property boundary, and the modern engineer who laid asphalt atop its ancient foundation, they were all interacting with a permanent feature of their world. The road had successfully transplanted its life force from the central state that birthed it into the land and the people themselves. This is the ultimate recipe for longevity, a transition from imposed order to emergent truth. The empire's most enduring monument was never the statue of the emperor, but the humble, open road that outlived his name to serve every soul who came after. These roads ultimately tell a story not of glory but of pragmatism. They reveal a deeply human instinct to pick up the tools left behind by a fallen civilization and ask, does this still work? We are natural inheritors, always looking for the path of least resistance, whether that path is made of stone or silicon. The dialogue etched into these ancient highways is a quiet one between our fleeting ambitions and the permanent facts of the earth. We draw our straight lines of conquest and administration, and the land, with its patient rivers and unyielding mountains, gently corrects the course over centuries, guiding the road toward its most useful, most natural form. The true testament is not to the empire's power, but to our collective willingness to adapt its most practical gifts. So the next time you drive down a long, straight highway or walk a familiar country lane, pause for a moment. Consider the layers beneath you. That path may hold the ghost of a Roman legion's march, the echo of a Silk Road caravan's bells, or the whispered prayers of a medieval pilgrim. These silent threads connect us to a chain of travelers stretching back millennia, all following the same simple, human impulse to find a better way forward. If this journey through the resilience of the past has sparked your curiosity, there are countless other historical mysteries waiting to be unraveled. What forgotten infrastructures shape your own world? We invite you to explore further, to look down at the ground you travel and wonder about the stories it has carried across the ages. The echoes of those ancient journeys are still with us, in the very ground we walk upon and the digital pathways we navigate each day. This conversation between our ambitions and the Earth's permanence offers a quiet lesson in humility and foresight. It asks us to consider what we are building today that might quietly outlive us, serving purposes we cannot yet imagine. Perhaps the most profound legacy is not the grand statement, but the open platform, the resilient path that invites the future to find its own way. If this exploration of roads that refuse to die has resonated with you, we would be so grateful if you shared your thoughts below. What other ancient infrastructures do you find fascinating? Bridges, aqueducts, or something else entirely? Let us know in the comments, and if you would like to join us for more journeys into the hidden layers of history, please consider subscribing. Thank you for listening.